I really hate doing this, charging the batteries from the grid, but there's no sun. Look at the weather forecast for the next 7 days. Rain, 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 shower, shower, 80%, 90%. I really need to recharge this battery now to 100%. I want to show you what is happening with the balances. They are still connected for the last 3 weeks since we installed this battery. Is it 3 weeks ago? Since we installed these 2 batteries or these 3 batteries, this balancer there and this active balancer down there are connected to the battery permanently 24/7 for the last 3 weeks or whatever it is. And I really want to show you what is happening now if we recharge the battery for the very first time after these 3 weeks or 2 weeks or 10 days or so. Hopefully this afternoon we can actually do it. Can you? Fan. So the question is, can you leave the balancers connected to the battery 24/7 all the time? Or is it really necessary to turn them on at the very top only? As I always said. Yeah, by the way, welcome back to the off-grid garage here in not so sunny Australia at the moment. Lots of rain, lots of clouds, no sunshine. So this is the battery in the top shelf with our overkill solar BMS, and the deviation is 5 millivolt. The battery in the middle is connected to the JK BMS. Deviation here is 11 millivolt. The bottom battery is still connected to the Haltech. Exactly, that's still the Haltech BMS. And we've got 10 millivolt deviation here as well. Okay, so that's not too bad at the moment because we are still in the flat area of the curve, as you know. So hopefully we can fully charge the battery in the next couple of hours. I'll leave the power supply running here on the grid, which is 100% renewable as well. And we also have some solar power coming in, which is like 850 watts from solar and 850 from the power supply at the moment. So my friends, we are at 97% state of charge, the Victron Smart Shunt claims. And we can see it says there are still 25.6 ampere hours missing until we hit the 100%. If we go into the overkill BMS and we are still under 3.4 volt cell voltage, it is not moving much. Okay, the JK PMS, 4 millivolt deviation, and even here 3.38 volts only. And this is the Haltech BMS, 14 millivolt deviation and 3.379, same voltage of the cells, so nothing happening. This is so fascinating how this battery chemistry works, because we are at 97% state of charge and we can still see the same behavior as like at 80%. And this is exactly why so many people get confused with lithium iron phosphate batteries. The charging curve is so flat, and once the voltage is rising, it is too late. You are at 97, 98, 99% state of charge. So charging this chemistry to 80% only is almost impossible. And it's not necessary, as we have seen from the many tests here on the channel. Guys, it is already dark outside and we are still charging the battery from the grid. We've got another 6.7 ampere hours to go, is the Victron Smart Shunt claiming. And I just had a look here in the history and it tells us, so 13 days and 5 hours ago we had the last full charge. And since then the battery was never fully charged again, never hit the 100%. And here we can also see that this was the time when we fully charged the battery for the very first time and balanced all 3 battery banks at the top. Yeah, and then I used the battery, people like that, with a screwdriver on the phone. Then I've used the battery, the weather went really shitty, until the point where I said, well, I turn off all the loads and just keep the essential loads going, and I want to fully charge the battery again and see what is going on with the balancing. Because during all this time, from here all the way down up to here, the active balancers were connected, as I said before. And I always made the big claim and said, well, don't leave these balancers connected all the time. Only at 3.4, 3.45 volts per cell, turn on these active balancers. Otherwise, you're getting a massive imbalance you're getting a massive imbalance in your battery pack, because the balancer will balance all the time. It measures the voltage difference between cells and push energy across these cells then. And you don't want this if you are not top balancing your battery. Otherwise you're creating an imbalance. Makes sense, right? So today we want to find out if I was right or if it just was the old battery. And the bad connections between terminals and bus bars, where I always had issues in this battery, always. And if you have higher resistance between terminal and bus bar, you then of course have also a voltage difference. The balancer recognizes that and starts balancing. So there is hope with the new connections we have made across these battery cells here. We have very low resistance and the balancer hasn't done anything, or at least very little only, and can rebalance once we hit the higher voltages. And we are still charging at 55.2 volts I have set, and the current is slowly tapering off here. So we can see the batteries are getting slowly into an absorption phase and are saturating. Okay, let's have a look at the single BMSs. So from what I can see here on the Heltec BMS battery, one cell number 16 is at 3.475 already, and you can see the deviation here, almost 100 millivolt, while the other two BMSs 10 millivolt in the overkill and only 5 millivolt in the JK. But so far no balancing has happened here. This is only what the BMS shows us while we are recharging the three batteries in parallel. Well, I'm measuring the current going into cell number 16, and we can see 750 milliamp coming out of this cell into, well, other cells which are lower. So the balancer is still working just fine, but yeah, that's quite a big difference, imbalance in this pack for some reason. And all the other ones 3.38 something, there's 3.4, 3.4, so 14, 15, 16 are a tiny bit higher. And now the balancer has kicked in as well. Yeah, you can see the little flash symbol in the battery there. That means it is getting balanced by the BMS as well. So interesting why this cell is so high, while all the other ones here, overkill, nothing over 3.4, that's the only one. 13 millivolt, 6 millivolt, and almost all of them are at 3.4. This is still the most balanced pack. Even the other ones had the balancer connected all the time. But we can already see a higher imbalance in these two batteries, which had the active balancer connected all the time. Quite interesting. Okay, we've got our screen recording running on all three devices again. On the left we've got the top battery in the top shelf with the overkill solar BMS. In the middle we've got the JK BMS, and on the right we've got the battery in the bottom shelf, which is connected to our hang saw BMS still. Interesting to see, the one on the left and the one on the right are the batteries with the active balancer connected for the last 2 weeks 24/7. And the deviation, 36 millivolt in the overkill on the left and 165 in the hang saw BMS on the right, while the battery with no active balancer connected during this time is the one in the middle and has the lowest deviation with only 12 millivolts. All of the three battery banks were 100% calibrated at 3.62 volts each of the cells for each bank, so it was 100% top balanced. And then on the left and on the right I left the active balancer running, while the one in the middle has its own active balancer, which only kicks in if one of the cells is over 3.45 volts, which was never the case in the last 2 weeks. But the other two BMSs or batteries of course got balanced all the time, because the balancer just sees the voltages and shuffles energy around. And guys, what can I say? look at the overkill on the left, the deviation is actually rising. It was just when I started the screen recording at 36 millivolt, and we are now at 39 millivolts. So even the active balancer is still balancing now, but the deviation gets larger and larger. And the same on the Haltech BMS on the right, 159 millivolts, and cell number 16 is here, 3.53 volts. I have seen 3.55, but I lowered the overall charging voltage now to 55.2, which is my absorption voltage. I just want to simulate what is happening when the solar charge controllers would still work. Well, we are in the middle of the night, so this is all coming from a power supply, but with the same absorption voltage setting of 55.2 volts. So it really looks like having an active balancer connected all the time is not beneficial. It is doing actually the total opposite. It imbalances your battery. The one in the middle, totally fine. There was no active balancer, there was no balancing happening. So this is the deviation the battery came from the last top balancing 2 weeks ago, while the other two got constantly balanced by the active balancer. But we will see. We will charge to 55.2 and see when the current tapers off, what kind of deviation we have then. But at the moment it looks like it's not good for the battery. It causes the exact opposite of a balanced pack. Alright, talk to you again in a minute when we get closer to 55.2. Okay, so I have now charged to 54.6 volts. We can see the deviation in the Haltech battery on the right, 220 millivolt. It's balancing two batteries now, while the JK battery in the middle, 22 millivolt only deviation. And the overkill at the left, 153. So again here, both battery banks which had the active balancer connected for the last 2 weeks non-stop have issues now while recharging. While the battery in the middle with the JK BMS had no balancing at all during this time and is totally fine. So we are discharging cell number 16 in the Haltech battery with over 2 amps, but I think we will have a disconnect very soon. 3.63 volts we have, and we are still charging with 4.5 amps around. We don't know, and I still haven't heard back from Haltech, but voltage is still rising. So people have now suggested, well, if the BMS can now talk to the solar charge controller and slows down charging, this would actually prevent the BMS from turning off. While this is totally correct, it would also slow down charging for the other two battery banks, which are totally fine. So in this perspective, I don't like to throttle down solar charging now. Even one of the cells will be shut down this battery bank, but it will shut down only this battery bank while the other ones are totally fine. And then it gives the balancer time to actually discharge this one cell here, and over time it will balance all the cells then again. But certainly not a good situation. Okay, I slow down charging to 55.2 again, so we should see the current actually tapering off now. Only 7 amps, and this should give the BMSs more time to balance. While we don't see any balancing in here because none of the cells have actually reached 3.45 volts, we have balancing in the Haltech BMS, 250 millivolt deviation, 230 millivolt deviation in the overkill. So two different battery banks with different BMSs showing the same result with an active balancer connected. I think this is proof enough. What do you think? Well, the JK BMS is totally fine. Still it has 35 millivolt deviation now, but it is not even balancing. And here again, cell number 16 is super high, over 3.64 volts it had before I lowered the charging current. That is totally crazy. Well guys, I just missed it. The overkill solar BMS has turned off. Battery number 16 has reached 3.65 volts and turned off the battery bank altogether. There's no current going in anymore, and the whole charging current now splits up between the JK BMS and the Heltec BMS in the bottom shelf. But the Heltec is over 3.65 volts and just shut down as well. So it's all about the JK now. Still the power is on here in the garage, and the JK is the only battery bank connected. Oh no, the overkill has turned on again. On the left, turned off again. So we can now see the balancing process of the active balancer and the passive balancer of the BMS itself working on these high voltage battery cells. And the JK BMS in the middle has 46 millivolt deviation and is balancing as well. Still gets charged with 11.3 amps. We can now see the overkill solar on the left and the Hanksaw BMS on the right are doing this on-off switch cycle thing now and try to balance the battery cells in the pack, while the JK BMS has even stopped balancing because all of the cells are below 3.45 volts. 270 millivolt deviation in the overkill solar and 229 in the Heltec BMS at the bottom shelf with the active balancer connected. Okay, I would say leave this connected as it is here for a while, and I'll come back in half an hour and then we see what is going on. The charger still sits on 55.2 volts and we just keep everything as it is, as if I would not be at home. So I'll show you quickly what's going on here. Even after half an hour, 45 minutes, we still have a deviation of 230 millivolt in the overkill BMS in the top battery shelf. And frequently the BMS turns off because cell number 16 is peaking, and even the active balancer I have connected to the BMS. We can see only 1.4 amps is being discharged with the active balancer on cell number 16, and this is just not enough to balance the whole battery pack. It takes a long time, even with an active balancer. And we've got a similar situation in the Heltec BMS and the bottom shelf. You can see all these battery cells get balanced now, and cell number 16 is as well high here with 3.62 volts. And sometimes the BMS turns off the whole battery bank because this cell is over 3.65. And only the JK BMS has only 15 millivolt deviation. It is balancing right now. So again, the active balancer for 2 weeks on these battery banks totally destroyed the top balancing, it looks like it. Alright guys, so after fiddling around for another 45 minutes now, I'm getting the shits actually here. So what we can see now is here, the overkill solar BMS on the left is not able to keep this battery under control. We still have 103 millivolt deviation, and the active balancer is not really helping. Now the fan comes on. And we've got exactly the same situation in the Heltec BMS on the right as well. It has turned off again because it thinks the battery is fully charged, which is true, but why is it disconnecting the charging? You know, this does not make sense. It should not be up to the BMS to decide that. That's what the charge controller is for, not the BMS. The BMS turns off if we have an overvoltage or an undervoltage situation or the current is too high, but not because it thinks the battery is full. So the Heltec BMS is totally nonsense. Anyway, we have 67 millivolt in the Heltec BMS deviation, and even here the active balancer cannot really catch up. The problem is, I can show you this here on the overkill solar on the left. See, cell number 16 is at 3.57 volts. This is our highest cell. And cell number 3 with a gray color is at 3.47 volts. So we've got exactly 100 millivolt difference, right? 100 millivolt difference. Okay, let me measure cell number 16. And we can see we are discharging this cell number 16, which has 100 millivolt more than the lowest one, with only 470 milliamps. Yeah. So half an amp is going out of cell number 16 and into the other cells, presumably cell number 3. And the half an amp is not enough. This is a 304 ampere hour battery we have. And even in combination with the BMS balancer and the active balancer, they are not able to balance this battery pack. See, we are still at 100 millivolt. Nothing has changed in these couple of minutes. It is not enough. This half an amp will take forever. I can let the battery sit now here for overnight on the power supply, and it just balance everything fine until tomorrow morning. I'm sure this will work. I've shown this here on the channel for a few times. But the main thing here is we can see the active balancer is not able to balance your battery pack if you leave it connected 24/7 for 14 days. It creates an imbalance in this time in the battery pack, which it is not able to balance again when the battery is fully charged. And it's the same in the Overkill Solar BMS battery at the top, and the same in the Heltec BMS battery in the bottom shelf. Only the one in the middle with the JK BMS has no trouble at all. See, we are at 4 millivolt deviation at exactly the same voltage as all the other two batteries, and it has no trouble. But leaving an active balancer connected destroys your top balancing. Again, it shows it over here. Guys, okay, so what I will do now, I will try to balance this battery back to 58 volts. So I have to manual balance the single battery cells again and discharge higher battery cells with the lights, and use the small power supply to recharge single cells to help the balancers balance this battery pack again. So let me once again fully top balance this battery pack, and then we do another test. Of course we keep testing. We want to know what's going on. Because we know from the active balancers, they can push up to 5 amps from one battery cell to another battery cell, but they need the voltage difference for that. And if we have only 0.1 volt difference between the highest and the lowest cell, this push only half an amp across. The JK BMS, however, pushes always 2 amps between the highest and the lowest cell, regardless the cell voltage difference. So this is a big difference between the active balancer in the JK BMS and the active balancers we have connected to the other two batteries. And this is the reason why the JK BMS works so well. So the active balancer is not that much of an help. What it has destroyed in the last 2 weeks and balanced the pack all the time, it cannot rebalance now when we fully charge the battery. You can see on both batteries the BMS has to turn off because one of the cells is in over voltage situation. And the BMS just does what the BMS needs to do. It protects the battery, so it turns off the whole battery bank. And this is why I still think active balancers should not be connected all the time. We've got 2 different batteries, 2 different BMSs, and they show the same symptoms with an active balancer connected, while the third battery has not an active balancer and it works just fine. There's no issue. So what we are going to do now is we are fully charging the battery to 58 volts, which is 6.25 per cell. All 3 battery banks, 6.25 volts. And then I will disconnect both active balancers of these battery banks. And we will do exactly the same test again for the next 2 weeks. I use my battery as usually, charge the car, let the pool pump run the cables across to the house, and recharge during the day from solar. After 2 weeks, we are fully charging the battery again and see if we have the same issues again without any active balancer connected at all with these 2 battery banks. I probably can say we won't. We will have a fairly balanced battery pack. And then when we fully charge again, we can connect the balancer again to help the internal passive balancer of the BMS to balance the pack, but not before we hit the 3.45 volts. And we potentially can use the 2 charge controllers here because they have a programmable relay, and then they will turn on our active balancers for these 2 battery banks. So that would be something we can wire up in the next 2 weeks and then have this ready until we fully charge the battery again and see if this makes a difference. I believe it will, because this will then be the same behavior as the JK BMS does. It only balances once we hit 3.45 volt with one of the cells. Okay, I think this is the plan. It will probably take me another hour, 1.5, 2 hours here to fully top balance this battery. I have shown this many times here on the channel, so I won't bother you with this anymore. Once we have the 58 volts here in the pack on all 3 battery banks are balanced, we start our test number 3. And this will hopefully then confirm if active balancers should be connected all the time or if not. Okay guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for all your support here on the channel. It is so great to have you all here. We are learning a lot. I'm still learning a lot. And because I want to know what is happening, I'll do all these tests here in my garage and share this information here on my YouTube channel. And until the next video, guys, you stay charged, stay safe, and thanks again for watching. See you then. Bye-bye. I left the power supply on at 58 volts. And now all the packs are balanced. The overkill solar on the left is on 5 millivolt to 8 millivolt. The JK BMS is under 5 millivolt. And the Heltec BMS is at 8 millivolt. But the Heltec BMS has again turned off because it thinks the battery is fully charged and disconnects it from the charger. Totally stupid, this BMS. Okay, I will now disconnect the active balances and will use the battery for the next 2 weeks, and then we fully charge again and see what the deviation then is, and then use the active balancer just at the end when we fully charge again.